Today, we are going to be talking about if franchising is the right venture for you. So let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know who you are listening to. My name is Stacy Parkell, and I am a certified professional coach. I am also a certified franchise consultant, and I am a certified teacher in the state of Texas. I started off in the franchise industry. I went from teaching to becoming a franchise owner about 10 years ago. And through that experience, was very successful in franchising in my franchise business that I own. I won several awards, Franchisee of the Year in 2015, and then the following year I won the President's Award, which is the highest award that you can win within the franchise or that I have a franchise in. And then I was hired on as a mentor and a field consultant. And what that job entailed was for me to go around to different franchisees all over the United States and to help them become profitable, make sure that they were following the processes, and kind of hold their hand through the process of their business just to make sure that they were succeeding. I also have served on the Corporate Franchise Advisory Board. So I've had all sorts of experiences in the franchise world on both the corporate side as well as being a franchisee. So now I am a franchise consultant, and I help educate people about franchises, what it takes to own a franchise, the process of buying a franchise. And I work with over 400 franchisors, helping them to put their concepts all over the United States. I've also owned and sold 2 of my own startup businesses prior to do franchising. So I like to talk a little bit in my presentation about the differences in starting from scratch as opposed to buying a franchise. So let's talk about some common reasons for business ownership in general. People like to own their own businesses. It gives them control of your own financial freedom. It helps you build an asset for future sale. It creates more control of freedom for your time, which that was a big reason why I got into franchising. As a teacher, my time was very much controlled by a school schedule. And I had 3 kids at the time. Wanted to be able to say when and where I could go take my kids to the doctor or go to their activities at school, and I didn't have that afforded to me as a teacher. Some people go into business ownership for what they consider a fair reward. They make money for themselves instead of a company. If you think about it, if you're working for a company, all that work you do, you are building an asset for the company, not for yourself. If you were to get fired or you were to leave that company, you reap none of the rewards that you worked so hard to build. So a lot of people realize that and decide, you know what, the work that I do is going to go towards something that I'm building that I will own in the end. And if I choose to sell it, I reap the benefits and the profits from that. A lot of people also will buy a business so that they can fulfill an emotional need of building their own dream. Some people just aren't satisfied in their day-to-day activities of their corporate world or their job right now, and so they want just to find that happiness, that satisfaction in the day-to-day activities. Some people are doing it to build an asset, to pass on to family members, or to create an opportunity to work with their family. A lot of people get into business ownership after they have had a period of time where they have lost a job and found it very difficult to get a new job, especially as we get a bit older and face some age discrimination. It becomes a bit scarier prospect of that job loss and the length of time that you would be between jobs. And then some people keep a job and then they start another business and to replace some lost income stream along the way. So as you can see, there's a lot of reasons why people may start their own business. Everybody has their own reason. What's yours? So let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of a startup, meaning that starting a business from scratch. So the main advantages to starting from scratch is it really allows you to have innovation and creativity when you start from scratch. It's your business. You get to say how the business is run, what products you sell, how you sell them. There's also a lot of professional freedom and growth. There's no systems that you have to follow. There's also no kind of profit sharing or royalty fees, unless of course you get investors to come help you start the business up. And the opportunities for expansion or even franchising your idea are out there, as opposed to perhaps a franchise, which we will talk about in a minute. Now, the disadvantages of starting from scratch is there's definitely a higher failure rate. And that is because mainly people run out of cash. That first year, people underestimate how much cash is needed for working capital and to really get the business up and running. And because they don't have a set system in place, or people who've done it prior to themselves, they don't have a roadmap to understand or know what is going to be needed in that first year. Also, the disadvantage to a startup is there's a lack of support. You're the only one. You're the only one doing what you're doing, and so you don't have other business owners in a network that you could rely on to ask questions and see what they did and mistakes that they've made. And the big one is that you have to learn from your own mistakes when you start from scratch. So let's compare this to starting a franchise. A franchise, the advantage is that it's a proven system, and that provides for a higher rate of success. Business experience is not necessary, and I can vouch for this. I was a teacher before I owned a franchise. The way franchises are set up is to provide the franchisee with training and ongoing support so that you're successful, so that any business acumen that you are not bringing to the table, they will train you to do. Another big advantage of owning a franchise is brand recognition. Whether or not it's a small or a big brand, the fact of the matter is the more people who own franchises of a certain concept, the more the brand name is getting out into the public. Disadvantages of owning a franchise. Well, one disadvantage that people will often say is, I don't want to pay royalties. I don't want to pay these ongoing fees. And what I have to say about that is the amount you will pay in royalties to your franchisor is worth it in the training, ongoing support, usually marketing help that you will get from the franchise network. So whereas, yes, you may be paying these ongoing fees, most likely you'd be paying those same fees in some form if you owned a business on your own. Also, the restrictive rules of conformity. That is a big one. If you are the kind of person who has to be creative, who has to do things your way or the highway, then franchising is probably not a good route for you, because there are conformity rules in each franchise. And expansion can be more difficult. Franchisors do take into account the ability to expand in your territory or your area that you're buying into when you are buying your franchise, and they will give you the opportunity to buy territory prior to signing anything, which is really great. But once you've bought your franchise in your territory, there are some costs and paperwork that you have to do to expand. Keep in mind that starting any kind of business, whether it's a franchise or a startup, takes a significant amount of time, money, and resources. Franchising is not a get-rich-quick business strategy. It's a turnkey strategy to starting your own business. And I like to start this presentation off with this statement because oftentimes when turnkey is used in the same sentence as business, people might think that, oh, that means that I'm going to start making money right away, that it's going to be an easy ramp up. Yes, it'll be easy, but it's still going to take time. It is a business. You do have to ramp up. And so don't get into franchising if you don't have the mindset that you are going to be building a real actual business. So what is franchising? People often say the franchise industry. It's not really an industry. It's actually a method. It's a type of business. It's a method for expanding a business and distributing goods and services through a licensing relationships. In franchising, franchisors, which is the person or company that grants the license to a third party for the conducting of business under their marks, not only specify the products and services that will be offered by the franchisees, which is a person or company who's granted the license to do the business under the trademark and trade name by the franchisor, but the franchisor also must provide them with an operating system, brand, and support. So franchising, what is it all about? It's about relationships, it's about brands, it's about systems and support, and overall, it is a contractual relationship. So when you own a franchise business, the franchisor has to support its franchisees. It has to provide them with systems and support, and some of them will provide you with help with site selection and site development, training, research and development, buying power for their products, initial and continuing marketing, field support. All of those things are usually provided by most franchisors, and in return, the franchisee is obligated to deliver the products and services to the system's brand standards. So again, if you are the creative type where you don't think you can follow a system, or you are the type of person who thinks that your way is always better, it's probably not the best to get into franchising because you are obligated to follow their systems and their standards. So the benefits of systems in a franchise. You have an operating system. The success formula has been established for you when you get into a franchise. You don't have to create your own operating system. You don't have to play a game of trial and error to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. They've already figured it out for you. They've already, in a lot of cases, had redundant testing with other franchisees. So you're stepping into really a turnkey situation. Also, the benefits of in a franchise is lots of training, lots of support, plus collaboration of your fellow franchisees. The neat thing about being in a franchise system is that all of the other franchisees or business owners of that franchisor are all in the same boat as you. And it lets you have the opportunity to talk to other business owners who are doing the same exact thing as you and find out what's working for them, what's not working for them, or even just having somebody there to lend an ear when you might be frustrated or you want to share something exciting that happened in your business. So the collaboration piece is huge in a franchise system. Also, franchise systems usually will put together sales and marketing systems to help you really get the word out about their brand, because overall, they're successful if you're successful. Their brand grows if you grow their brand. So they want to provide you with all those tools necessary to do that. They'll also usually provide you with manuals and documentation if you have to hire staff. This prevents you from having to create the how-to manuals for staff, which can be very cumbersome, especially when you're starting a new business. And they're able to help you with shared resource costs and purchasing power, which can be huge. So oftentimes people will ask me, what are the different costs that are associated with franchising? So the first thing that you'll see usually when you research franchises is the franchise fee. And what this is really the cost of putting a franchisee into the business of the franchisor as a participant, not as a partner, but as a participant. It's the entry fee. It's the entry fee until you get to the point of initial training. And it's typically between $25,000 and $100,000. It is non-negotiable. One thing I want to say about this franchise fee is that it's kind of what they use to market their franchise. So to get out on the different websites when you're looking for different franchises, or to have their sales team help sell their franchises. And then also as a franchise consultant, I get referral fees by the franchisors when my clients buy their franchise. And that referral fee typically comes from this franchise fee as well. So you are paying for the service of a franchise consultant, whether or not you use a franchise consultant, which is why I recommend that you either use me or somebody else, if you prefer, as a franchise consultant to help you go through the process of buying a franchise if you choose to buy one. It is non-negotiable, so you're going to pay it one way or another. The royalty fee. This is also an important piece to look at when you're deciding which franchises you want to look into. It's typically between 6 to 10% of a franchisee's revenues, and it's typically paid each month. And this is where the franchisor makes their money. This is the oil that makes the engine run. This is where, when I say that a franchisor wants you to succeed because when you succeed, they succeed, this is why. If you're making money and you're bringing in revenue, they're getting a small percentage of that revenue, and they're getting it multiplied by the number of franchisees they have in their system. So this is where they make their money. Now, do they use their money for their own profits? Well, generally they will put the money, not all of it, but they'll put the money back in the system, developing better systems, paying staff, hiring more execs, whatever they need to do to really make the franchisor a great franchise. In addition to that, you'll see monthly what they call an advertising or marketing fee or ad fee. It's typically between 0 and 4%. I said 2 or 4 on this slide, but it can be 0. And what they do is kind of like a co-op. So you're giving 0 to 4% of your revenues each month, and it's going into a collaborative, cooperative fund, if you will, that will help them, the franchisor as a whole, build the brand. They'll use it for advertising campaigns, co-op programs, search engine optimization, all sorts of things. And it's to your benefit. So typically, you can expect each month that you are giving the franchisor anywhere, I would say, between 5% at the very lowest and 20% at the very highest, although there are a couple that are even higher than that, in royalty and ad fees. Now, those are not the only costs that you have to be aware of when you're buying a franchise. You also want to be aware of what are the startup costs. What is it going to cost you to build out if there is a brick and mortar? What is your inventory going to cost? What are your marketing materials going to cost? What's your working capital? Do you need to hire staff? Do you have to have payroll? With all of that, do you have a cash flow cushion? Because most likely, just like any other business that you're starting up, you are not going to make money on day one. It's going to take you a few months, if not a year or so. So making sure that you have working capital and that you have a cash flow cushion. These are all costs that you need to consider when you are buying a franchise. Going back to the cost real quick. People will often ask me, well, how much money do I need? I don't have that much money that I think I would be able to buy a franchise. What would be typical? I would say typical would be a minimum of 25,000 liquid would be what you would need cash-wise. A net worth, I would say a minimum of $150,000 net worth with good credit or excellent credit so that you can get a loan. Typically, if you are getting a loan to pay for the rest of the startup costs and working capital for your business, you're going to need about $100,000, if not more. Brick and mortar, you're definitely going to need more. So brick and mortar, you can count on $250,000 a net. So minimum 25,000 cash liquid, and then good credit and at least 150,000, if not more, in net worth, and you can get a loan for the rest. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Franchise category. So usually when people hear about franchises, the first thing that comes to mind is restaurants, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. And yes, they are franchises, but there are way more different kinds of franchises than the food industry. There are franchises in literally almost every category of business that you can think of. And I've listed a bunch here. I'm not going to read through all of them. But you can see pretty much any kind of passion you may have or skill set you may have can fit into one of these franchise categories. And we do have food as well. Typically, a franchise will require a percentage of the total cost in upfront cash, while the rest can be funded. There are numerous options for funding your new business. Many franchisors offer in-house funding, or their SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, approved for loans, which makes getting a loan for a franchise much easier. Some buyers will choose to tap into their 401ks, their savings, their credit lines, or other forms of liquid capital. There are ways to tap into your 401ks or IRAs without tax implications as well. So if you have questions about how to do that, be sure to ask me. So let's talk about the due diligence process or the research process of finding a franchise and making sure that you found a franchise that suits you best. So the first stage of finding a franchise is called the investigation stage. And that is basically when you are researching the different kinds of franchises and you're trying to decide which one suits you best, and you're reaching out to the franchisors and trying to ask them questions. Now, this is where you would engage my help or that of any franchise consultant. My services are free. I don't charge to do any of this due diligence part with you. But what I would do is I would find out from you, what are you looking for? What are your passions? What are your skill sets? And what is your budget? And then I would narrow down the franchises that suit you best. And I would get the information for you rather than you having to try to connect with the franchisors, which is very difficult to do when you're going about it on your own. I have connections with the franchisor, so I'm able to make an instant connection and get any questions that you need answered. So during this investigation phase, you will hopefully find a franchise concept that really interests you, if not a few of them. So the next stage is going to be discovery. And discovery is when you are actually talking to the franchisor or franchisors if there's several concepts that interest you. And during that time, you will learn So much about the individual franchisor. I mean, nobody knows more about that franchisor than somebody who's actually in the franchise. So they will tell you all about the franchise. They will answer questions that you have. They'll give you more details than you would ever get on their website or even talking to me. You're usually connected with what's called a franchise development team member. And I have special relationships with those franchise development team members, so I connect you with the right person. So it's not, you won't feel it won't be salesy. You won't feel like, oh, they're just trying to sell me a bit of goods. Because remember, they are looking for franchisees who are as good a fit for them as they are for you. If you make money, they make money. So they want to get really good franchisees in. So as much as you're discovering about them, they're discovering about you during the stage. It is not salesy. Oftentimes, my clients are kind of scared to go into the discovery stage because they don't want to give maybe the mixed messages to the franchisor that they're interested when they're just kind of exploring. The franchisors know this at this stage. They know that you're just in exploration, okay? An exploration takes about 3 or 4 phone calls with a franchisor before everything, you've discussed everything and you feel comfortable with, yes, I want to move on, or, this is not the right franchise for me. So if it is, yes, I do want to move on, I want to find out more, I may even buy this franchise eventually, you go through a stage called validation. And that stage is where you actually get to talk to real live franchisees who are doing the business. You get to talk to ones who are super successful. You get to talk to ones who are not successful. And you get to ask them all sorts of questions about their businesses, how they're run, how much money they make. This is the stage where you're really validating, is this the right decision for me? Once you have gone through the entire validation stage, you usually will be invited up to a discovery day at the franchisor where you get to meet the exec team and really make your final decision. Is this a company that I would love to work for? And if it is, then stage 4 is your commitment. And that is when you sign your agreement, you get ready to go up for training, and you start your business. It's very exciting. The whole process can take an average of 30 to 120 days. Really, a lot of it depends on you and how quickly you respond to your franchise consultant, how quickly you fill out the paperwork asked by the franchisors. And then a bit of it also has to do with the process that the franchisor will take you to. Really important. Keep in mind, again, the franchisor is checking you out as well. So when they tell you on that first introductory call, this is the process that we go through for our discovery and our validation, make sure you follow that process, that you don't try to rush things along or do the process in a different order, because they're testing you. They're wanting to see, can they follow our process? Are they willing to do things the way we do them? So here's things you need to consider when you're choosing a franchise. You need to look at the total investment costs, so not just the franchise fee, but the working capital needed, the startup costs, what you're going to be paying in royalties. You also need to look at what territories are available and the demographics of your territory. If you live in a retirement community where it's mainly grandparents and retirees, you're probably not going to want to start an education-based or a child education-based franchise in that area. Be very cognizant of what your demographics are and what territories are available. Again, another good reason to use a franchise consultant. One of the very first things that I do when I am starting my research for my clients is I check the territory availability for the franchises that I have in mind for them, to make sure that we don't go into it, get excited about a franchise, and then find out, well, it's not even available where they live or in their area. You also want to consider, what is the viability of a product or service in your market? And, do a competitive analysis. Is there a lot of competition in the market? You want to know, what is the time commitment required? Is the ownership mostly passive, or is it active? There's no such thing as a all passive franchise. You have to do some work in it, but there is a difference between a franchise that you can work on, like the CEO or just the operations part of the business, as opposed to the franchise that you have to work in as kind of the technician, or you're actually doing the work. So you want to know, what is the time commitment required? Also, you want to know, how many years has this business been in a franchise? A lot of franchisors have been in business for 10, 20 years, and that means that they really have worked out their systems and worked out the kinks. But just because a franchisor has not been in business for a long time doesn't mean that you should negate them. There could be really great opportunity in starting with a franchisor that has just launched. You get to be part of the growth and help with the systems, and you get a little bit more creativity because they're not so set in their ways. So it's not always a bad thing to get into the ground floor of a franchise. Also, you want to look at the potential revenue and income. Now, by law, the Federal Trade Commission does not allow a franchisor or somebody like myself, a franchise consultant, to give any kind of financial claims unless they are listed in the franchise disclosure document, which we'll talk about in a minute. So chances are you are not going to get the answer to the question, well, what is the ROI? Or how much can I make? And when can I make it? From the franchisor. However, when you go through the validation stage and you are talking to the other franchisees, they are not obligated by those same rules. And so you can ask them those questions. They may or may not give you full disclosure and to tell you their sales and their revenues, but usually you talk to enough franchisees where you can ask questions and piece the puzzle together and figure out, what is your potential revenue and income. Again, though, keep in mind, every business success depends on the business owner. So just because you talk to 5 business owners that are terribly successful doesn't mean necessarily that you are going to be as successful, because it really is going to depend on your mindset, your territory, your cash flow, your business acumen. There's so many other pieces of the puzzle that determine potential revenue and income. Also, if you're a veteran or a first responder, there are often really good discounts on the franchise fees. So you might want to look into franchises that that cater to veterans and first responders. And also, if you are not in the US and you want to come to the US, a lot of franchises are visa eligible. Again, franchises are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and they must provide you with a franchise disclosure document, or FDD for short. You will hear that a lot as you go through the franchise discovery process. You will be asked to sign a one-paper document just saying that you received the FDD, but this doesn't bind you to any kind of contract or commitment with a franchisor. This FDD is very lengthy, but it contains a ton of pertinent information about the franchise and how it's run. You really, really need to read an FDD prior to even going to validation, to going any further. Once they hand you or they send you the FDD, you want to make time, a few days, to go through it. It's a very easy read. It's just very lengthy. So what are the franchisors looking for? You're making these calls with the franchisors, you're asking questions. What are they thinking when they're talking to you? First thing they're looking at is your financial capabilities. So I like to start my clients off by connecting them with some lenders that specialize in the franchise businesses, and they can give you a kind of pre-qualification. Like if you were buying a house, it would be the same thing. It's a pre-qual to see how much franchise can you invest in. And the franchisors want to see that. They don't want to waste a lot of time with prospects who then they find out don't have the capital to actually invest in their business. They want to see if you're willing to follow the system. So again, If they say, this is our process for discovery and for validation, don't suggest a different process. Don't say, well, I'm ready to buy and I'm just want to skip all of that. So let's just go ahead to that point. They want to see if you can follow a system. They want to see growth mindset. They want to see somebody who is not afraid to try, who's not afraid to go through the roller coaster of owning a business. They want somebody who can get over obstacles and succeed. They want to see somebody who's enthusiastic about their brand. And they want somebody who has realistic expectations about starting a business. If you say to a franchisor, well, I want to make $100,000 and I want to be making it my first year of business, realistically, you're starting a new business. So that is not always a realistic expectation in starting a new business. And the franchisors will let you know that that is not a realistic expectation. And they don't want to bring somebody on board that they're going to set up for failure. Being an expert in the field is not necessarily a trait that franchisors are looking for. And that's because experts often think their own way of doing things is better and they'll try to change the system. The strongest franchisees are actually the ones that are willing to follow the franchisor's proven system. That proven system is the biggest advantage of buying a franchise. So if you're a chef and you're thinking of buying a sit-down restaurant that's a franchise, you may not be as an attractive buyer to that franchisor as maybe a multi-unit spa owner. Because as a chef, the franchisor might have a fear that you would want to go in and change the recipes and put your own meals on, when most franchises have, the food franchises have their own set menus and they need you to follow those systems. So what are some common fears when starting a business? Not being an expert. That is probably one of the bigger fears that I hear is, I've never been in this industry before. I've never done this kind of work before, and I'm afraid I don't know how to do it. Don't worry, there is training. You will get extensive training. You will be an expert in your franchise. The franchisor will not bring you on board if they don't feel that you're trainable and that they can replicate what they've already done. You may get judgment from others, especially maybe your spouse or your partner, who may think you're crazy. Why are you spending their money on this risk? You might be afraid that you won't be able to find the funding. There are several creative ways to get funding for a franchise, but again, as I talked about before, there are some criteria that you should make sure you have before looking into it, such as some cash and good credit and a decent net worth. You might be afraid that you're not going to be able to attract customers. Well, that's a fundamental of any business. So if you are afraid that the brand wouldn't work where you are, or that you are just such an introvert that you are not going to do any sort of marketing to get customers, that's a legitimate concern. So franchisors are set, like I said, turnkey. They give you the tools to attract customers, but if you're not willing to do the work, or you're scared to do the work and you cannot get over that obstacle, that is a legitimate concern, and franchising might not be a good move for you. Funny enough, a lot of people are scared of success. They're scared of, what if I do succeed? What are the next steps? I don't have the business background or the business acumen to know what I'm supposed to do when I'm making a lot of money. Again, don't worry about it. The franchisors have that in place. They have field support, and they have training that will help you get through the various levels of success that you have with your business. Failure is another big common fear, especially failing your family, taking money that was going to be your family's and risking it. But then again, if you look at the return on investment that you can make on franchises, that money might either be sitting in a 401k making 10% in return on investment, or they might be in a very successful franchise making much more. So if this is a very strong obstacle for you, it's a legitimate concern. But if it's just something at the back of your mind, but you're pretty sure that with your growth mindset and your drive that you can overcome it, then kind of put this one, behind. Just be determined that you are going to succeed in your business. Another one is not earning a return on your investment. It's a risk, like everything else that you invest in. It is a risk. But you are the biggest factor in the success of that risk. So if normally you are the entrepreneur kind who is fairly successful at most things that you try, and you don't get knocked down really easily by obstacles and mistakes and failures, and you are determined and you want it, then that you factor is much will bring you that success. So if you are the kind of person who an obstacle hits and you kind of get into the victim mode and you're like, I'm scared, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do this, then yeah, not earning a return on your investment is very likely, because you really need to look at this as a business, as an investment, and that you're going to do everything in your power to make a return on investment. And then overcoming the inevitable bumps in the road. So owning a business is a roller coaster. Every business is. And if you are afraid that you won't be able to overcome those bumps in the road, then this is not the path that you want to be taking. Finding a franchise to invest in can be overwhelming and time consuming. And as a franchise consultant and coach, I'm able to provide support, direction, and advice to you at no cost. By sharing my extensive knowledge of franchising and utilizing my advanced search tools, I'm able to save you an immeasurable amount of time and money, as well as provide you peace of mind when buying a franchise. I provide you with education about franchising. I identify characteristics most important to you. I match your qualifications to appropriate systems. I narrow down selection of franchises to focus on. I'll introduce you to appropriate personnel at the franchisors in which you're interested in. I act as a liaison between you and the franchisor. I will assure that you know the right questions to ask. I'll coach you through the fears and obstacles that might surface as you're getting ready to buy your franchise. I'll help you understand and read through that huge franchise disclosure document, the FDD we spoke about earlier. And I will also connect you with other service providers in the industry, like lenders, CPAs, and things like that. Again, my services are free. I'm paid a referral fee by whichever franchisor you end up choosing. Every franchisor allocates an amount to the franchise fee for this purpose, whether or not you choose to use a consultant. Using a consultant or choosing to do it yourself will not change the franchise fee. So you essentially have nothing to lose and an incredible value to gain by using my franchise consulting services. So if after seeing this presentation, you are more interested in researching franchises and possibly moving into a franchise business of your own, give me a call, send me an email. My information is here, info@findyournextventure.com. My phone number is 972-277-1470. And let's set up an appointment. I'd like to get to meet you, get to know more about you, and we can start going through the process. You've got nothing to lose and a lot of information to gain. I want to thank everybody for being on the call today. If you have any questions at all, shoot me an email or give me a call and I will be more than happy to answer those questions. And I hope to speak with you guys soon. Take care.